Hello, Planet Internet. I'm Emperor Cole. This is Emperor Cole Film Review, brought to you by MindbenderENT.com. And today I'm making a review of Avengers Endgame. Now, this is going to be a spoiler review, so if you have not seen the movie yet, you definitely want to jump out and go take care of that. For everybody else who has seen the movie, let's get ready to take this journey together. You could not live with your failure. So, where did that bring you? Right back to me. Let's do it. Avengers Endgame is written by Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus, and of course directed by the Russo brothers. This is their fourth movie that they've directed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Endgame is the 22nd movie in the MCU and had the absolute difficult task of tying together all the loose ends from Avengers Infinity War, and of course, it needed to be a satisfying movie and the end to the Infinity Saga. So there was a lot of pressure on this movie, and there was rumor that it was going to be 3 hours. Of course, you've seen the film, so you know that it actually was 3 hours. A lot of people were a little bit skeptical about this runtime, but they pulled it off very well. This movie does not feel like it's 3 hours at all. So, Endgame is without a doubt, I've never seen a movie in my life that had this much hype and anticipation behind it. People were absolutely going giddy. The pre-sales for this movie were off the charts, completely broke all of the records. And once again, since the movie's already come out, you know that it broke the all-time record for box office. There was speculation as to whether or not the movie could earn $300 million in the weekend, and it completely destroyed that, doing $357 million. So, of course, if you saw the movie, you know that they did pull off time travel, and they were able to go back in time because of Ant-Man's PEM technology, of course, that he got from Hank Pym. So now, I'm okay with the time travel. It gets a little convoluted towards the middle. I'll talk about that as I go on, but one thing that I found to be a little peculiar was the fact that Ant-Man got out of this van and out of the quantum realm by simply a rat, by chance, happened to step on the right sequence of buttons in the van, and that's how he was able to come out of the quantum realm. That seemed a little cheesy to me, but at the same time, I guess it's a comic book movie. You just need to go with it. Don't overanalyze it. One thing that I absolutely enjoyed about this film was the fact that we get a different version of Tony Stark. After 5 years has passed and the decimation and half of life has been wiped out, Tony has kind of accepted the fact that the Avengers lost. Tony has moved on to a much more simpler life. He doesn't live in the city anymore. He's living by the lake in like a simple house with Pepper Potts and their daughter. So for anybody keeping score, you remember that scene in the park where he's walking with Pepper and he turns to her and says, "I had this dream, it felt surreal." He says that we had a daughter, we named her after your great aunt or something. And he says, "Morgan." That was very good foreshadowing by Marvel that this was what was actually going to happen with him. So I like that we see Tony Stark as a father. This father-daughter relationship that he has with his daughter Morgan, it's very cute, and it's showing that Tony is mature. Tony has accepted his role as a dad. Like, that's what his life is all about now. He's basically given up the whole superhero gig. So that's just like when Captain America, Black Widow, and Scott Lang show up, and they come to him with this time travel thing. He's telling them, like, this is kind of ridiculous. And then, of course, Scott Lang says, I lost somebody very important to me. A lot of people did. He says, this is our second chance. And Cap, they're all like kind of rah-rah. They want to do this time travel thing, try to undo the snap and Thanos. And he picks up his daughter and he says, Cap, I got my second chance. I wish you guys came for something else. But that just shows that Tony was 100% invested in family life. He was doing what he was doing. He was happy with what he was doing. And of course, that scene where he's tucking his daughter in bed at night and she says, "I love you 3000." That's something very emotional, tugs on the heartstrings. If you're a father, if you have children, just putting your kids to bed at night and just having that moment that you're making sure they're safe. Like, just seeing that from Tony Stark, like I said, Tony was enjoying his life as a dad. And when he went downstairs to Pepper, he says, she said she loves me 3000. You were somewhere in the low 8 to 900s. Like, Tony was loving his life as a father, and that made with his sacrifice later on in the movie all the more significant. Oh man, speaking of emotional scenes, the way the movie opened up with Hawkeye with his daughter, where he's training her to shoot the arrows, and he got his wife and his sons in the background, they're playing catch, and they got the whole family picnic thing going on, and the next thing you know, he turns his head, he looks, and his daughter's gone. And of course, we, the audience, we see this dust kind of floating. We know what just happened. He turns and looks for his wife and his kids. His other kids, and they're just gone, and nobody's around. And he's like yelling, he starts running, he's trying to figure out what's going on. You want to talk about emotional? That scene hit hard as well, and it was great to set the tone for the film. Of course, something like that could drive a man crazy, that he literally just lost his whole entire family in the blink of an eye. So that explains how he ends up on this path as Ronin. In the comic books, he completely just becomes just a different character. Much like in the movie, he goes on this killing spree against all bad people, anybody who's done anything wrong, and completely loses himself. So I love the way they opened up the film with that. It shows that our heroes are dealing with a lot of emotions. People are dealing in different ways. People are dealing with the loss and the decimation. Some people went to extremes where they become very aggressive and violent, like Hawkeye, as he becomes AKA Ronin. And some people, of course, kind of just like depressed and obsessed, and they just can't get over it. Just like Captain America and Black Widow. They're still doing the Avengers thing. Captain America is going to like AA type meetings where he's sitting down with people are talking over their problems, trying to get to their emotions, trying to adapt and deal with this new world. Just like Black Widow, she's still running the Avengers, and she's trying to figure out the world, the universe's problems. But of course, she's only a human. She's one person, and you see her taking on this role. You see the effect that it's having on her. Like even her hair is growing out. The dye is going from blonde to red as the hair grows back in, and she doesn't care. She's doing it anyway. Just like when she's sitting out eating the peanut butter sandwich, when Captain America comes in and she looks so sad, she's talking with him. Like, that's real emotion. They're showing superheroes dealing with emotion, this emotional event, and I love the way they portrayed that. One character who did not get his just due in Endgame, in my opinion, was the Hulk. We had the Hulk getting beat up by Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, where he got whooped on. And then he refused to come out and fight from that point going forward. And this particular movie, everybody was expecting that he would get some kind of ultimate rematch with Thanos, and that never happened. Instead, we got Professor Hulk, who was far more Bruce Banner than the actual Hulk, in my opinion. So yes, he had the brains and the bronze, as he said, when he was sitting at the table doing his celebrity thing, taking pictures with the kids. So he looks more like the Hulk, but his mannerisms, his actions, and his behavior is far more that of Banner inside the Hulk. For example, when they went back in time and they showed up in 2012 at the Battle of New York, and Hulk sees himself raging out, and he's hitting Chitauri warriors with the car and smashing them, and he's going crazy, and Banner's looking like, oh man, he's embarrassed at the way he used to behave. And now he's like, I just feel like it's a little egregious. So he goes and he does the fake, he fake picks up the bike and throws it and goes, that was hilarious. But like I said, he's more Banner than he is Hulk now. One part of the movie that gets a little bit confusing somewhat is, of course, the explanation on time travel. Anytime you use time travel in a film, there's always an area where it could get confusing because, of course, once you go back in time, everything can change, you know? So I like the fact that they had this scene where they get ready to do the test run, where Scott Lang is telling the Hulk, you know, be careful with this pin particle, don't drop it because we don't have very many of these. And then when Hawkeye decides that he'll do the test run, he'll be the one to go back. And of course, before that, when they sit and Rhodey says, you know, of course, time travel movies, they're all the same. You know, they tell you what the rules the time travel are. And Back to the Future, Terminator. He lists all these movies, and he even mentions Hot Tub Time Machine. Like, I thought that was really hilarious, but at the same time, they're kind of setting the parameters for what the Marvel Universe time travel thing is going to be. And the fact that Hulk says you can't go back in time and change events that have already happened, because going back in time now becomes your future, and the stuff that already happened, already happened. So I thought they set that up somewhat well, but as stated, basically, anytime that someone is not going back in time to let you know, here are the parameters, here's what the rules to time travel are as far as we see them. So now, of course, later on in the movie, when Captain America decides that he's going to go and be Peggy, he's going to live that life with her as opposed to just coming back to be a superhero. And then later on, when he comes back in the movie and he's completely old, he's lived his life, it kind of makes you wonder now. I guess that was their way of explaining that even though he went and lived back in the past all the way up to the present with her, all the stuff that happened already happened. So, of course, back in time, there are two Steve Rogers now. One's in the ice for 7 years, and the other one, of course, marries Peggy, goes on to be her husband. And, of course, now that leaves the door open where you wonder, did he have any children with her? If he had children with her, that has to change something, doesn't it? Because now you have human beings who exist who didn't exist before. That becomes a whole another thing that I'm going to talk about later on. To keep it real, that's probably going to come its own video. All the different offshoots of what could have happened because of this film. Another thing I will say about the Marvel time travel rules, I felt like they put those rules in place as far as nothing you do in the past actually changing events that have already taken place. Because of course they just did 22 movies that are all interconnected. So of course people would always say, "Oh, but if this person did this, that affects that. This changed this in that movie." So I feel like they put that in specifically for people like myself, so we couldn't go on and have these debates. All of these debates are going to happen anyway. So the way the ancient one explained time travel and the Infinity Stones being missing from their specific timeline to ban them was that if you take the Infinity Stones from this point, you create a branch reality that's basically that's in black. That meant bad things were going to happen because this universe no longer had its chief weapon against the forces of darkness, as she explains it, right? So now, how that relates to the main Marvel Cinematic Universe, after the snap or the decimation, after Thanos snaps out half the life of the universe and he goes to this planet, which is assumed to be quote unquote kind of like Titan 2, his utopia, where he's just being a farmer and he's in his garden. Thanos, as the movie opens up, says that he basically reduced the Infinity Stones to atoms. He got rid of them. He destroyed them. So that means that the main Marvel continuity universe no longer has its Infinity Stones. So they don't have their main weapon against the forces of darkness. So I think that foreshadows that Phase 4 in the MCU is going to see a lot of more cosmic, really big bad guys show up. The death that no one actually saw coming, at least I know I didn't, was the sacrifice of Black Widow on Vormir. When the teams were breaking up on the time travel mission and they're standing on the platform, and of course she looks at everyone and says, "Oh, see you in a minute." You know, the first time I saw the movie, it didn't completely resonate with me. But my second and third time that I saw the film and I knew she wouldn't be coming back, it is definitely heart wrenching. And the fact that they were going to Vormir, and even though Nebula said Thanos went to Vormir with Gamora and he came back by himself with the Soul Stone, they didn't quite understand that someone was going to have to be sacrificed in order to get that stone. So the fact that the audience, when they were first watching it, our first viewing, like we knew that there was going to have to be some kind of way that they were going to have to get that stone, but the rules of the stone stayed the same regardless of who showed up to get them, regardless of what year they showed up to get them. So I like the fact that they kept it true, and I also like the fact that her death basically sticks. Even when Hulk did his snap with the Stark Gauntlet to try to bring everyone back, and he says that he tried to bring her back and he couldn't, that shows that this death is actually going to last. That also reiterates that Gamora's death in the main movie, in the main continuity, is completely 100% like it's done. It's not going to be undone. So I like that. Speaking of Vormir and the Soul Stone, at the end of the movie when Captain America has to go and put all the stones back where they came from, how was Captain America able to find Vormir given that he'd never been there? And before Infinity War, the only person who had any information about Vormir and the Soul Stone was supposed to be Gamora, who she told the secret to Nebula, right? So at what point was that information exchanged to Captain America for him to be able to return the stone? And of course, nobody actually sees where the Soul Stone really comes from. People basically just pass out after the sacrifice and they wake up with the stone in their hand. So where did Captain America actually return the stone to? See how that gets a little confusing or slightly convoluted, but when you're watching the film, trust me, you won't think about any of that stuff. You'll only do all that analyzing and breaking it down if you review movies like I do for a YouTube channel. Also, as Captain America showed up to Vormir to return the Soul Stone, and he sees the Red Skull face to face, since the Red Skull is doomed to know all those who seek the Soul Stone and show up there, is Red Skull still there? And if he is, of course, what do they say to each other? And after he returns the stone to Vormir, does Red Skull automatically now back? He's tasked now to come back to Vormir. Does he have to stay there? Like, how does that work? Like, what does he say to him? Does he look at him and say, "Steve Rogers, son of such and such," But he already has the stone and he's returning the stone. So like I said, that's one of those things. Maybe that's for another video. Another thing in this movie that I absolutely enjoyed was that the movie is self-aware, and the movie like I said before, it makes references to other time travel films. Like it even referenced the movie Back to the Future and Back to the Future 2, which is the movie that it shares a lot of DNA with, or it has a lot of similarities with. Like for example, when they go back to the Battle of New York, and we now see the end of Avengers Part 1 and how they handled Loki and arresting him at the end. We get Robert Redford, who's the director of he's above Nick Fury and Shield and all that, and we get to see that whole scene, how that plays out. Hulk comes down the stairs, he's angry and bashing around, and that caused him to just miss being able to get the Space Stone. And of course, Loki gets the stone, and then Loki teleports himself somewhere else. I feel like that's definitely going to create some kind of alternate something, because now that stone is no longer with Shield for those events to take place. Loki goes wherever he goes with it, And of course, if you pay attention to the business and the film and all that good stuff, Disney has a series where Loki is getting his own series that's going to be on Disney Plus, and everyone's already speculating that that series is going to be about Loki's adventures with the Tesseract, what he goes off and actually does. And maybe, just maybe, they're going to tie in that series, and maybe at the end of that series, he ends up back to something familiar that we all know, and that's going to explain how the Tesseract ends up back with Shield and how the original events that play out in the MCU actually play out. That's my guess. Nebula, of course, is Thanos' daughter. She's his least liked daughter. She's the one that's failing and never as good as Gamora. So she's always trying to get her father's approval. She's trying to do anything to make him happy, to show him that she's worthy of being his daughter. I think that it was very interesting, and it was a great plot point to show that this is how Thanos was able to find out about their time heist and that they come back in time to try to stop him. The fact that her consciousness and her memory is linked and on the same exact drive as the her that comes back to the past. And they're able to access her memory files and see all the stuff that happened in Infinity War, so that he knows that he actually wins the battle. He knows that he's able to get the Infinity Stones, and he's able to complete his mission. So I thought that was dope. I like the fact that Nebula is a complex character. She's got this relationship with Gamora where she's trying to, basically she wants to get her sister back somehow, trying to figure that out, but showing that she's constantly fighting and arguing with her because they're both trying to be accepted by their father. They're trying to one-up each other, trying to best each other. So I love what they did with her. And for anyone keeping score, in the comic books, Nebula was the one who took the Infinity Gauntlet off of Thanos because Thanos had become so big, he become godlike, he become omnipotent, he left his physical body, and he's basically like in the universe and just watching over everything, able to do whatever he wants. But his physical body is just sitting there with the gauntlet on it. So in the actual comic book, she removes the gauntlet from his hand, she takes it, and then she starts using it. But of course, Nebula's mental mind state is not stable, and she starts doing a bunch of crazy stuff, and they have to get it off of her. So that almost correlates to when they had the Stark Gauntlet, and the only person who was strong enough to use it was the Hulk. He was the person that they designated who was going to use it and try to snap everybody back. And you remember Thor tried to say, oh, I can do it. But Thor's mental state was not completely together. He wasn't stable. Just like Nebula in the comic books. Who knows what would happen if Thor would have tried to wield the gauntlet? Who knows what he would have done, who he would try to bring back. Like what they did with Fat Thor, it was definitely hilarious seeing Thor with this big old bear gut, because you used to see him being super diesel and chiseled and all that good stuff. But now seeing him where he's dealing with his depression, he's dealing with the fact that he feels like he failed everybody because he didn't go for Thanos' head when he threw Stormbreaker at him. And just like when the movie opens up, where they look and say, what's wrong with him? And Rocket says, oh, he feels like he failed everybody. And he says, oh, there's a lot of that going around. They're showing that Thor, once again, the superhero, is dealing with his emotions. He's dealing with the anxiety that he's gotten. Just like that scene later on when they're at New Asgard, where he's drinking beer with Korg and Meek, and they're still playing Fortnite, and all he's doing is drinking. He thinks that Banner and that Banner's come by to hang out, and he's trying to tell him, no, we think we got a way to undo the snap that Thanos did. Hearing the name Thanos triggers anger in him. It triggers anxiety where he kind of gets scared, and he's trying to say, oh, did anybody else kill that guy? I chopped his head off, and I think Rocket says, oh, it was Stormbreaker did, actually. But he's like, well, I was willing to Stormbreaker. But just showing that he's still stuck in that moment. He's not able to mentally or emotionally get past that. I like the fact that they're showing these characters are dealing with real emotions. And everybody deals with loss and trauma totally different. And just to further add on about Thor, you have to keep in fact that Thor is basically dealing with 3 defeats in a row. At the end of Thor Ragnarok, Asgard was destroyed by Surtur. So he took that loss. He wasn't able to beat Hela, and Surtur showed up, and the demon, he had to allow him to destroy Asgard. He had to allow Surtur to destroy Asgard, so Hela would have to deal with him. So he wasn't able to defeat her, so he lost in Thor Ragnarok. Then they get onto this ship where he's got all the Asgardians, where they have to try to find somewhere else to make home. Thanos shows up, beats the hell out of all of them, kills half of the Asgardians. That's another loss that he just took at Thanos' hand. Loki gets killed right in front of him. Then in Infinity War, he finally gets his new hammer, Stormbreaker. He goes and finds Thanos. He throws the axe in his chest. He's about to have his big victorious moment, but Thanos is still able to pull the snap off, and half of existence now is wiped out. So you have, like I said, you have to keep in mind, Thor has took 3 significant losses in a row. So it definitely makes sense that he would be in some type of a depressed state. And it definitely makes sense that he mentally and emotionally would not be the same Thor that we saw in all particular movies going forward. So we saw what he used to be. We saw how all these losses just affected him. Obviously, he's now going to be a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Whether or not he's going to get back in shape and be the same Thor that we remember, that remains to be seen. It's going to be interesting to see how James Gunn handles that going forward. But so another thing that I thought needed a little bit more explanation was the Stark Gauntlet. So now with the Stark Gauntlet, Tony Stark was able to somehow make a gauntlet out of regular metal and alloys that were found on Earth to create something that could hold and harness the power of the Infinity Stones. Yet in the Infinity War movie, Thanos had to go to Ned Valer, whatever, where the actual dwarves were, and have each specially build this device that can harness the power of the stones, that was made out of the metal forged from a dying star and all that. Same place where Mjolnir and Stormbreaker were forged. So if Thanos had to go to this special place to get this special type of metal that could actually hold these stones, how is it that Stark can just suddenly, just like that, make one out of regular Earth metal? So the battle in the third act of this film is absolutely the best superhero movie fight sequence that I've ever seen on film. It was completely amazing with a whole bunch of awesome moments, more than I could ever sit and talk about because it would make this video way too long. But I definitely want to say it is the best battle I've ever seen filmed in a comic book movie. So I love the fact also that we get Thanos where he's just sitting there waiting for them to come out and actually fight him. Anytime a bad guy sits down calmly and waits for you to come fight him, you know you're getting ready to get a badass battle scene, and you know this is somebody that can definitely handle themselves. So I love the fact that Thanos was still holding them down where he didn't have the Infinity Gauntlet, because there was a lot of speculation online as to whether or not Thanos was really this strong and whether or not he could really beat them like that without the Infinity Gauntlet. And for anybody who reads the comics, you know how strong Thanos is in the comics. They powered him down, way down in the movies to give them more of a chance to at least be able to fight with him. But in hand-to-hand combat, they still couldn't do nothing with Thanos, where he had that double-sided blade and he was handling them. But until Captain America was able to summon Mjolnir, and that's a callback back to Age of Ultron, where they were having the party scene where Thor told him that you have to be worthy to be able to pick up the hammer. And when Captain America went to pick it up, it budged slightly and saw Thor's face. That was a great callback to the movie, where now in this one, Captain America is able to summon Mjolnir to his hand, and he was actually able to give Thanos some work when he got it. That was the only person who definitely gave him some competition, and even then, Thanos was still able to overpower him, knock the hammer out of his hand. He wrecked Cap's shield, where he basically just broke it in half, where Cap was down to just half his shield. But of course, Cap was still ready to scrap, even though he was outmanned. Thanos' whole entire army came behind him, and he says, all the conquering and killing I've done over the years, it's never personal. But he says, what I'm getting ready to do to this tiny planet, I'm going to enjoy it very much. Like, he was just that sick of Earth and having to fight and deal with them. So, and also I love the line where he opens it up with them when they first come. Of course, Thanos has to give his little speech. He has to talk because he's the villain, And he says to them, you couldn't deal with your failure. And where does that bring you? Right back to me, And he tells him, he says, I thank you because now I know what has to be done. Basically he's saying that he knows he has to wipe out all of life and completely start all over. Because he's saying if there's any half of existence that still knows what they lost, they won't be grateful for what they have now. So in this movie, Thanos was much more of a thug. He was more of a classic villain in this movie, where he wasn't as philosophical as he was in Infinity War. Because in Infinity War, he made some very good points, and he was a villain who had purpose, and he was still very educated in the way he was very fluid with the way he spoke and presented himself. He presented arguments that had logic and all that good stuff. Another thing, just to add also to that scene where the battle's going on, where things are looking bleak for Captain America, he's standing there against Thanos, and like I say, he stands up, he tightens his shield, he's still ready to fight, he's still ready to battle, even though he's completely outmanned and definitely going to be killed if he has to face all these people by himself. And then of course we get that crack in his headset. He gets the sound coming through. You hear Falcon's voice, and he says, Cap, on your left. And then you see all of the portals, the Doctor Strange portals start opening up. You get Shuri, Black Panther, and Quay, I believe they walk through. And you get everybody showing up, where Cap's backup is now showing up to support him. The whole entire theater went crazy. Everybody almost went out of their seats. It's moments like this. This is why we go to see these MCU films. But I absolutely loved it. And now we knew this battle was getting ready to take place. The odds are being evened out. All the superheroes that returned from the snap, everybody's showing up. It's dramatic. People are jumping through the portals. Everybody's getting into their superhero stance and getting ready to fight. And of course, you see Thanos' face where he kind of looks pissed, like, oh man, like these guys, And even though this version of Thanos, I'm guessing he doesn't 100% understand. These are all the people that he snapped out of existence. But now we're seeing that, okay, this is going to be a real fight. I like the fact he takes the blade and he holds the blade up and kind of he points for his Black Order and the Outriders, all of them. You know, like let's do it. He points the blade. It's time to engage in battle. Let's go fight. And like I said, that fight sequence is out of this world. It is the best fight sequence, the best action sequence that I've ever seen in any superhero movie. It is better than the airport scene in Civil War. Up until this point, that was the best action sequence and fight scene I've ever seen. This one completely destroys that one and blows it out of the water. As this big battle is going on, everybody's trying to get the gauntlet, the Stark gauntlet that has the Infinity Stones in it. It goes from Barton to Black Panther. From Black Panther, I believe he gives it to Spider-Man. It's cool when Spider-Man has it because, of course, he's doing his Spider-Man things. He's webbing, he's running, he's jumping, he's got everybody after him. And eventually he ends up giving it to, I believe, Captain Marvel. So Captain Marvel, she has it, and then they get the A-Force scene where all the women are with her, where she's got her backup, she's got help, and they're all having that scene is dope. I like that. And of course, that's another nod to the comic book because there is a comic book run where it's the Avengers, where it's only the female characters. The A-Force scene was dope with all the ladies coming together to support Captain Marvel as she went and she was trying to get the Infinity Gauntlet or trying to get the Stark Gauntlet to the van so they could send the stones back in time with Ant-Man. But of course, Thanos, how he knew that they were trying to make it to the van, I have no idea. But he took his blade and threw it in the back of the van and completely blew it up to stop that from happening. That was dope because, like I said, Thanos was one step ahead of them. He was able to stop them. So, of course, now there's this scramble, this fight where they're trying to get to, he's trying to get the glove so he can do his new snap where he's going to wipe everything out. So he's tussling with Captain Marvel, and of course, she's ridiculously strong. He took the Power Stone out, punched her in her head, and completely knocked her out, and that's the end of her as far as the battle in the movie goes. So, of course, that shows that he was even able to scrap with her to a certain extent. But they're going to have a little bit of a problem with Captain Marvel, in my opinion, because they made Captain Marvel a little too strong. I said that in my Captain Marvel review. But when Thanos is able to punch her and knock her out, that now wipes out her out as far as being the person who's going to stop him. And then, of course, when Stark comes up and starts trying to get the gauntlet off of him, how Stark was able to somehow get all the stones out that quick without him noticing is a little convenient, but at the same time, since it is Stark technology and he built it, maybe he has something where the stones are easily transferred to his suit or something like that. So when Thanos goes and says his line, "I am inevitable," and he snaps and you get the Tinker, you realize he doesn't have the stones. For a moment, I was about to say, wow, I know they ain't going to let Thanos win 2 movies in a row. And of course, you see the stones are now powering up in Tony's glove. And he's got this dramatic moment where he says, "And I am Iron Man." And of course, in the battle, when he asked Doctor Strange, he said to him he wanted confirmation. He says, "Hey, you said there's only one instance where we actually went and we beat this guy. Is this it?" And Doctor Strange says to him, "Hey, I can't tell you what happens because if I do tell you, it's not going to happen." So now, of course, if Stark knows that he was going to die doing the snap to save everyone, would Stark have still sacrificed himself, knowing that he wouldn't have his wife and his daughter? Basically, he was going to die. So, of course, obviously, Strange told him, "No, if you know what happens, you're not going to do it." So he had to be in that moment. He had to just actually do it and feel it and go with it. So, of course, Stark does his snap, says, "I'm Iron Man," it's dramatic. And, of course, that's too much energy. There's too much focused energy going through a human being, and it kills him. So that is very sad. It's very dramatic. But at the same time, it's also a callback to Avengers Part 1 when he had that argument with Captain America. I believe they were on the Shield helicarrier, and Captain America says to him, "You need to stop pretending like you're a hero. You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, to crawl over the other guy, to lay your life down on the wire," or something like that. And Tony responded with that snarky, "Oh, I believe I would just cut the wire," you know? So, yes, Stark did make the sacrifice play. He sacrificed himself. His death has to be permanent because you have to show your audience that things do matter. There are stakes in the MCU. So, Tony Stark, if he gets his hero's farewell, of course, you had the funeral scene where everybody shows up and they float off that device and says proof that Tony Stark has a heart. They let it float off into the river or float off into the lake. So it was a sad ending. It's definitely there's a lot of people who were in tears or near tears. Me myself, I knew Stark was gonna have to die for this movie to end. I expected Captain America to die as well. I didn't expect him to get this ending where he just goes back in time and lives out his life with Peggy Carter. I thought he was gonna die too. But I love the ending, and I love the fact that, like I said, there were real stakes, real things were on the line. and it didn't end with a super duper happy, joyous ending for everybody. So it's time for me to give this movie a score on the Mind the Movie Meter. I'm gonna have to say Avengers Endgame. I'm gonna have to give it a score of 91%. Avengers Endgame, 91%. I enjoyed this film. I believe you will too. Definitely check it out. Definitely let me know your thoughts about the movie, things you enjoyed or things you didn't enjoy in the comment section, and let's talk about it. Okay, so this has been Emperor Cole Film Review for Avengers Endgame. If you enjoyed this review, definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure you check us out on our other social media platforms. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Mind Entertainment, on Instagram at mindbender_entertainment, on Twitter at mindbenderent, and of course, check out the website mindbenderent.com for all things superhero related, pop culture, and just really cool original material that we produce. Like I said, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check us out on other platforms, and we'll see you next time. And remember, the future is now.